The steam from the espresso machine rose like a Manhattan fog, obscure, cold. My hands moved quickly, grinding the expensive beans, steaming the organic milk. To the world, I was Elara, the quiet girl who managed the Upper East Side penthouse. The one who polished the silver, dusted the art, and was never seen. My family, they didn't see me either. They only saw a servant who shared their blood. My older brother, Leo, was pacing the marble floor, his voice sharp with frustration. Where is that representative from Vance Holdings? If we don't secure this $20 million line of credit by noon, the bank will foreclose on the entire building. Little did he know, Vance Holdings was my creation. It was the ghost company I ran from a laptop while they told me I was a failure. Welcome everyone, it's Ava here. If you are a fan of stories where the quietest person in the room is actually the most powerful, you're going to love this. Welcome to Bitter and Sweet. We bring you tales about secret lives, ultimate power plays, and the moments that leave you breathless. If you're here for the drama, make sure to hit that subscribe button and never miss a reveal. Let's get back to the story. Leo turned to me, his eyes cold and stressed. Elara, go make sure the conference room is perfect. And for God's sake, change out of that sweater. The CEO of Vance is a sophisticated woman. Don't embarrass us with your mediocrity. I felt the familiar burn, the sting of their dismissal. For 10 years, I had built an empire from scratch, investing in distressed assets, and now, I owned the very building they were standing in. I just nodded and walked away. I locked the door to my small room, the only corner of this penthouse that felt like mine. Outside, the chaos was growing. I could hear Leo on the phone, his voice cracking as he begged for more time. They were desperate for a savior, but they had spent their lives making me feel small. It was time to show them who was really in charge. I pulled out a key from a hidden pocket in my bag and unlocked a sleek, black trunk at the back of my closet. Inside sat a tailored, midnight blue power suit, hand-stitched, worth more than their monthly mortgage. This wasn't the clothes of a servant. This was the armor of a billionaire. I pulled my hair back, tight, professional. No more loose strands, no more looking mediocre. I checked my encrypted phone. A message from my chief of staff, Marcus. The board is ready, Elara. We've finalized the foreclosure documents for the Vance building. Just say the word. My family thought they were meeting a stranger today to save them. They didn't realize they were meeting their landlord. I put on my heels, the click on the wooden floor sounding like a countdown. I walked to the back elevator, the one used for service staff. I wasn't going to the conference room from the kitchen. I was going down to the lobby to enter through the front doors with my full security detail. I wanted them to see the transition. I wanted them to see exactly who they had been ignoring for 10 years. The ghost was about to become very real. The lobby of the Vance building was a cathedral of glass and steel, cold, expensive, and currently filled with tension. I could see my father and Leo through the massive front doors, pacing the marble floor like trapped animals. They were checking their watches every 30 seconds, terrified that the savior they'd prayed for wouldn't show up. They didn't realize she was already there. A fleet of 3 black Cadillac Escalades pulled up to the curb, sirens silent, but presence loud. My security detail, 4 men in identical dark suits, stepped out in perfect synchronization. One of them, Marcus, my head of protection, walked toward my door. He opened it, shielding me with a large black umbrella. I stepped out, my midnight blue suit catching the light of the camera flashes from a few nearby journalists. I walked toward the revolving doors, my head held high. The security guards at the front, men who had ignored me for years when I carried groceries through the back, now snapped to attention. They didn't recognize the maid in the CEO. They only saw power. As I entered the lobby, the clicking of my heels echoed off the high ceilings, a rhythmic countdown to my family's realization. Leo saw us first. He nudged our father, his face lighting up with a desperate, greedy hope. They straightened their ties, wiped the sweat from their foreheads, and stepped forward to greet the mystery billionaire. "Welcome, ma'am," Leo said, bowing his head slightly, his voice thick with a fake respect he had never shown me. We are honored to have Vance Holdings here today. I didn't stop. I didn't smile. I just kept walking straight toward the private executive elevator, leaving them standing in my wake. The elevator ascended in a vacuum of silence, 40 floors of glass and steel separating the street from the power. I watched the numbers climb. 38, 39, 40. The door slid open to the executive suite, a place my father had always told me was no place for a girl like me. I stepped out, my security team fanning out behind me. Marcus opened the heavy mahogany doors to the boardroom. My father and Leo were already inside, standing by the window. They turned around, their faces tight with a desperate, professional smile. They were ready to beg for their lives. But as I walked into the light of the chandelier, the smile on Leo's face didn't just fade, it evaporated. He looked at my suit, my briefcase, my eyes. "Elara," he whispered, his voice cracking like thin ice. What are you doing in here? Get out before the CEO arrives." I didn't answer him. I walked to the head of the table, the chair that overlooked the entire city. I pulled it out and sat down, crossing my legs with a slow, deliberate calm. My father stepped forward, his face turning a deep shade of red. "Elara, this isn't a joke. This is a multi-million-dollar closing. Go back to the kitchen and stay there." I looked him dead in the eye, the man who had spent 20 years calling me a ghost. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the foreclosure notice, the one with the Vance Holdings seal. I slid it across the glass table toward them. "Sit down, Leo," I said, my voice low and steady. "Sit down, father. We have a lot to discuss and very little time." The room went dead silent. The only sound was the wind whipping against the glass outside. They stayed frozen, looking at me as if they were seeing a monster for the first time. The silence in the room was suffocating, thick with the smell of expensive leather and old lies. My father finally moved, but his legs looked weak. He reached for the document on the table, his fingers trembling as he read the name at the bottom. Elara Vance. The signature was mine, sharp and unmistakable. "This is impossible," he muttered, his voice barely a breath. "Vance Holdings is a global entity. It's an empire. You're just my daughter." I leaned forward, the light from the chandelier reflecting in my hazel eyes. "I've been your daughter for 25 years, but I've been the CEO of Vance for 7. While you were busy telling the world that Leo was the future of this family, I was busy buying up your debt. Every loan, every mortgage, every missed payment. I own it all." Leo finally found his voice, but it was high and panicked. "You stole from us. You used our name to build this." I didn't blink. "I used the inheritance Grandma left me. The small fund you told me was pocket money for a wedding I'd never have. I invested it. I turned 5,000 into 5 million, then 50, then 500. I didn't steal anything, Leo. I just worked harder than you." I signaled to Marcus. He opened a laptop on the table, a screen glowing with red numbers. A map of their company's failures. "I've spent the last month auditing your books," I continued, my voice like a cold blade. "You've been skimming from the employee pension fund to pay for your summer house in the Hamptons. You've been falsifying records to hide the fact that this building is structurally unsound." My father's face went from pale to ghostly white. He realized then this wasn't just a business meeting. It was a trial, and I was the judge. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. My father tried to loosen his tie, his breathing ragged. He looked at Leo, then back at me, as if searching for a loophole in a contract that didn't exist. "You can't do this, Elara," he choked out. "We're your family. You destroy your own legacy just to prove a point." I stood up slowly, my chair sliding back with a soft, haunting hum on the marble floor. "My legacy?" I whispered, walking toward the window, looking down at the tiny lights of the city. "My legacy was the girl who slept in the room next to the laundry, the girl who made your coffee while you laughed about how she'd never make it in the real world. You didn't give me a legacy, you gave me a reason to build my own. I turned back to them, the cold blue of my suit matching the cold light of the office. I tapped the table. Here's the deal. You sign over your remaining shares of the Vance building to me, tonight. In exchange, I won't turn over the evidence of your pension fund fraud to the district attorney. Leo slammed his fist on the glass. That's blackmail. I didn't flinch. No, Leo, that's an exit strategy. You can leave this building with your freedom, or you can leave it in handcuffs. The choice is yours. My father looked at the pen, then at the document. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He'd seen me grow up. He knew once I made a decision, it was final. He reached out, his hand shaking so much he could barely grip the silver pen. With one stroke, he signed away the empire he had spent 40 years building, the empire I had already taken from him. The ink was still wet on the page, but the world had already shifted. My father dropped the pen. It clattered against the glass like a fallen soldier. He looked aged, defeated, as if the very air had been sucked out of the room. Leo was still standing, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. You think you've won? He spat, his voice trembling. You're still just Elara. You're still the girl who grew up in the shadow of this family. I didn't flinch. I picked up the signed document, feeling the weight of the paper. It felt like freedom. Leo, there is no shadow left. I bought the sun. I turned to Marcus, who was standing by the door. Alert the staff. Tell the building manager that the transition is complete. Effective immediately. Vance Holdings is the sole owner of this property. And I am Vance Holdings. I walked back to the head of the table and pressed a button on the intercom. Security, please come to the 40th floor. We have 2 individuals who need to be escorted from the premises. My father looked up then, his eyes filling with tears. Escorted? Elara, this is our home. We live here. I looked at him, really looked at him. No, father. You lived here because I allowed it. But the audit showed you were using the company's maintenance budget to pay for your private chef. That ends tonight. The double doors opened and 4 security guards entered. They didn't look at my father or Leo with the respect they used to. They looked at me, waiting for my command. Please assist Mr. Vance and his son in gathering their personal belongings, I said, my voice echoing in the vast space. They have 1 hour. After that, their access codes will be deactivated. I turned my back on them, looking out at the city I now officially owned. The penthouse was silent, but it was a different kind of silence now. The heavy tension of the meeting had been replaced by the hollow echo of empty rooms. I stood in the center of the grand living room, watching through the glass as the 2 men who had shared my DNA walked toward the elevator, escorted like common trespassers. My father didn't look back, but Leo did. His eyes were filled with a hatred so pure it should have burned, but I felt nothing but a cold, refreshing peace. I walked to the kitchen, the place where I had spent so many mornings making their espresso. The machine was still there, gleaming in the moonlight. I realized I didn't have to make anyone coffee tomorrow. I didn't have to hide my laptop when I heard footsteps. I didn't have to pretend I was less than I was. I sat down at the granite island, and for the first time in 10 years, I just breathed. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a news alert. Vance Holdings acquires Manhattan landmark in shock takeover. The story was breaking. My name wasn't in the headline yet. I had kept it that way for a reason. But the industry knew. The people who mattered knew that the ghost of New York real estate had finally stepped into the light. I scrolled through the comments, seeing the confusion, the awe, and the fear. I looked at the small room down the hallway. My room. The place where the maid lived. I called Marcus. Have a cleaning crew here at 8 a.m. tomorrow, I said, my voice echoing in the empty penthouse. Everything in that small room, the simple sweaters, the old books, donate them. And tell the interior designer I'm ready to turn this entire floor into my private office. I hung up. The maid was gone. The CEO was home. The sun rose over the East River, bleeding gold and orange across my new office. The city was waking up, unaware that the hierarchy of its skyline had changed overnight. I sat at the massive mahogany desk, the same one my father had used to sign my dismissal letters years ago. My phone was a constant hum of notifications, bankers, journalists, rival developers. Everyone wanted a piece of the woman who had conquered the Vance building. Marcus entered with a stack of files, his expression as neutral as ever. The board of directors from the neighboring firms are requesting meetings, Ms. Vance. They're calling it the Vance volatility. They're scared. I leaned back, a small, cold smile playing on my lips. Let them wait, Marcus. I want them to wonder what I'll buy next. Information is more valuable than capital, and right now they have none. Around noon, my personal phone rang. A number I hadn't seen in months. My mother. I let it ring for 3 beats, then 4 before answering. Elara, her voice was small, shaky, stripped of the usual judgment. I heard the news. Your father, he's staying at a hotel. He told me everything. I stared at a small scratch on the desk, a reminder of the old regime. And what did he tell you, Mother? That he lost or that I won? He told me you've been the one paying for my sister's tuition, she whispered. And the one who funded my gallery opening last year. Why didn't you tell us? I closed my eyes for a second, feeling the weight of 10 years of silence. Because if I had told you, it wouldn't have been love. It would have been a transaction. I wanted a family, not a board of directors. I hung up before she could respond. The power had shifted, and there was no going back. The rain returned to Manhattan, a heavy, gray curtain that matched the mood of the city. I was finishing a merger agreement when Marcus buzzed the intercom. Leo is downstairs, Ms. Vance. He's causing a scene. He says he won't leave until he speaks with the real CEO. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly. The real CEO. Even now, after the deeds were signed, he couldn't accept the reality. Bring him up, I said, my voice calm. But tell security to keep him at a distance. The doors swung open and Leo practically stumbled in. He wasn't the polished, arrogant prince I had grown up with. His hair was messy, his suit was wrinkled, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 48 hours. He stopped in the middle of the room, staring at me behind the desk. You think you can just erase us? He shouted, his voice echoing off the glass. This building has our name on it. You're just a squatter in your own family's history. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. The name on the building is Vance, Leo. And as of yesterday, that name belongs to me. You aren't a Vance anymore. You're just a guy who couldn't balance a checkbook. He lunged toward the desk, but Marcus was faster, stepping in his path with the silence of a shadow. Leo stopped, breathing hard. I need money, Elara. The bank froze my personal accounts. They're investigating the pension fund. You did this. You set me up. I didn't set you up, Leo. I just stopped protecting you, I said, standing up slowly. I walked around the desk until I was inches away from him, separated only by Marcus. I spent years fixing your mistakes, paying off the people you insulted, covering the tracks of your incompetence. But I'm done being the ghost. If you want money, go find a job. I hear they're looking for property managers in the Bronx. Maybe you can start where I did. I signaled to the guards. Leo started screaming as they dragged him out, but his voice faded as the heavy doors closed. The prince was gone. The penthouse was quiet again, but it wasn't the lonely silence of the maids' quarters. It was the heavy, powerful silence of the throne room. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker like a million tiny promises. My father had called again, leaving a voicemail that sounded like a broken man trying to remember how to be a father. He didn't ask for money, he just asked if I was okay. I didn't call him back. Not yet. Some wounds take more than $1 billion to heal. I walked to the small hallway to the door of the room I had lived in for 10 years. It was empty now. The twin bed was gone, the simple desk where I built my empire was moved to the gallery. I stood in the doorway, remembering the nights I spent crying because I felt invisible, and the mornings I spent working because I knew I wasn't. I reached out and touched the doorframe one last time. "Goodbye, Elara the servant," I whispered. "You did good." I returned to my office, the lights humming softly as I sat down. Marcus entered with a final folder. "The merger is complete, Ms. Vance. Every asset is now under your name. The board is asking for your first official statement as the chairperson." I looked at the blank screen of my laptop. For 10 years, I had no voice. Now, the whole world was leaning in to hear what I had to say. I began to type, not a corporate speech, but a manifesto. Success isn't about the name on the building, it's about the person who has the keys. The city was mine, but I wasn't the girl they thought I was. I wasn't the silent investor anymore. I was the loudest voice in the room, even when I didn't say a word. I looked at the picture of my grandmother on my desk, the only person who ever saw the fire in me. I smiled a real, genuine smile. I had reached the top, and the view was exactly as I had imagined. I wasn't a ghost. I was the lighthouse. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end. This has been a journey of shadows, power, and the ultimate revenge. Sometimes, the people who think they know you the least are the ones who lose the most. I'm Ava, and this has been a production for Bitter and Sweet. If this story left you speechless, don't forget to like, share, and comment below with your favorite moment. Until next time, keep watching because the best stories are the ones you never see coming.
Goodbye.